Welcome to the Life's Best Medicine podcast, where we are finding hope and healing one episode at a time. No appointment needed, no rubber gloves, and no coping. Just a healthy dose of life lessons to help equip you for this wild journey we call life. Hey everyone, we are in the difficult time of the year for us dieters and people trying to be healthy. You're going to have temptation. You're going to have some lattes here and there, and maybe sneak some eggnog and sneak a cookie that grandma made or whatever. So when you can be good, you simply Snackin'. They're great. They're sponsoring the podcast. They're doing some great things. And so on those good days, reach to them to keep you from grabbing that cookie. Eat something healthy so that you won't have to be fighting like crazy on January 1st, trying to get back into shape again and trying to get your belt loops, belts not so tight. So Simply Snackin's here to help you. So order from them. Again, they're a great company, and they have a unique code called Life's Best Medicine to get 10% off. So thank you for your continued support, and good luck at dodging those minefields during the holidays. Hello and welcome back to the Life's Best Medicine podcast. This is fun. I get this guy finally on this podcast. He was a huge inspiration for low-carb MD, along the way. He was anyone who hasn't heard him yet. Ken Armstrong, welcome.
You,
so great I can't wait to share your story with people because, your story is so important. But going back, he was on episode 111 of the Low Carb MD podcast, my other podcast, and really inspired us. As a matter of fact, after we talked to him, we changed our pitch line there, to no one is beyond help and no one is beyond hope. And that was Ken on our podcast. So, I saw that and I loved it. I love that he said, look, don't give up, keep going. And that's what this podcast is about. And, that we made it into a picture for our wall for our patients when they leave and when they come in, they see that. That's one of the first things they see. It's like, hey, look, you've messed up in the past. You've had struggles. Okay, let's see if we can work together and get that better. So Ken Armstrong, welcome. It's so great to have you.
Thank you, Brian. Thank you. From a wet and windy Ireland.
Yeah.
It's fantastic. Great to see you.
It's great to see you, man. I love it on Twitter when you're sharing your pictures of your walks and all this. Like, one day I'm going to make it out there and we're going to go for a walk together.
Absolutely, yeah.
Tell people your story and where you came from and
Sure. I mean, I suppose, over the last, so really, I suppose it starts as a sort of a fairly big kid, went through quite a bit of growing. I was probably one of the bigger kids in my class, and probably amongst my friends, I would have been one of the bigger guys, but nothing that when you look back in pictures, you see that it's not as bad as you ever thought it was at the time. But I suppose over the course of a good period of time, I started to put on weight, particularly when I moved into the hospitality section. I started to work restaurants and bars and alcohol and food at the end of the night that hasn't been sold, and long hours and stress and all that sort of stuff. And it just got worse and worse and worse and worse. And I suppose over the course of, say, 15 years, I managed to get myself up to 450 pounds. I'm 5'11", so that's big. And really, I tried everything. I tried vegetarianism. I tried all sorts. And if I was just really at the point of saying, right, okay, look, this is me. This is what I am. And a chance meeting with a guy in London. Actually, I went to London to buy a suit, and he said to me, I was walking around the shop. I was trying all the different suits on. He was saying, I said to him, "Do I look big in this?" Now I'm 450 pounds. I can't look anything else. But I said, "Do I look big in this?" And he said, "Sir," he said, "you're going to have to embrace your size." He said, "You're not the biggest man I've seen today, and you won't be the biggest man I see today." I said. And he said, "Look, just embrace your size." And when I left the store and started to come back home, I thought to myself, well, that's it. Look, I'm Ken Armstrong. This is it. And if you don't like me, and that's it. I am who I am, and I'll take that and embrace that. And that moment, I think, was the time when the scales dropped away from the eyes and the denial stopped, and it was like, okay, yeah, but I don't like what I see, so let's try and do something about it. and I tried stuff before, but I suppose a chance meeting or chance reading of Gary Taubes' Why We Get Fat probably changed my life completely, because he explained his storyteller way why that narrative that we'd put up with and been told constantly by healthcare professionals, it was just wrong or not appropriate for me. Let's a better PC term. It's not appropriate for me. And do you know what? It worked, and I suppose, years ago it would have been branded as Atkins. It was effectively low carb and then to keto. And I suppose, you do start to think to yourself, well, it's working. It starts to work. It works. And I suppose within 18 months, I'd lost 175 pounds, which was just incredible. And in fact, if you'd have told me when I started it, I asked, somebody asked me, well, what's your target? And I said, well, I don't really have one, but do you know what? If I lost 12 or 14 or 20 pounds, I'd be delighted. And I remember thinking about that conversation when I got to 100 pounds. And then when I got to 175 pounds, it was just an incredible relief and stuff like that, I suppose. But then I made the classic error of believing my own hype that I was cured. And I know I've talked to Bitten Johnson and to Jen Unwin about this. Like, you're not cured of a sugar addiction. You're not cured of that. And I went back, it was a Christmas 2017 or 2017, and I went, oh, do you know what? I'll have a nice bit of Christmas cake. It's a great time for, Christmas just coming up, and I had a big Christmas cake, and it just all came back. And it was like 18 months later, it was 80 pounds heavier again. And I just thought, how did you manage to let that happen again?
Yeah, and that's amazing, but you caught it in time. Oh, hold on. Hey, Jack, cut just for a second. Okay, Jack, pick it back up here. So, one of those things, you lose 175 pounds and you gain back 80. So you're still almost 100 pounds down. But then you see where you're going and you kind of get out of control. And I think that's it's just like in life. I think we get comfortable. I've done it myself, where I get comfortable. Oh, I don't need to work out every day this way. I don't need to. Yeah. And you start getting, and then you go, oh, I'll go tomorrow. And then again, I'll go tomorrow. And then I'll start after the holidays. I'll start and so it's a hard thing. And I think that's really important, especially this time of the year, where a lot of us are, really, I tell my patients, if you can maintain during the holidays, you're way ahead of the game. Because all of us have gained 15, 20, 30. I've had people gain 50 pounds in the past, between 3 months before, I seen before Halloween till after the new year.
Yep. And so, but this time, unlike when I got to 450 pounds, I think I started to work out that I couldn't let this happen again. So I went back, and what I actually did is I regrounded myself. I went back and read Gary's book again, and I just went, right, okay, look, now you've got to get sorted. And then at that point, I got back on a very strict keto, and over the course of the next 2 years, I lost that 80 again and 35 more. So I'm now at a total loss of 210 from my original weight. But actually, that's nearly 300 if you count the two lots of 80 that I've gained and lost. But I always only count it as 210. So I'm 240 now. I was 450. And it's life-changing. It's life-changing.
Yeah, it's amazing. Just going back, because I think you're a forgiving type guy and a kind person. I've always picked that up from you. Like, were you kind to yourself when you were 450 pounds? I mean, did you say, hey, look, I'm just going to get better and better, or were you disgusted? I mean, how do you, because it's a hard thing, because I get the body beautiful and, hey, love yourself wherever you're at. And I believe that to a degree. You have to love yourself where you're at, but you have to say, okay, like you said, hey, I don't want to just accept this the way I am. It's just like, and I think so many people, like, they don't believe they're smart because their parents said that you weren't smart. I remember when I was a kid, my dad would say, hey, you have such wisdom. You're so smart. You're so, like, you have so much, like, it was positive. It wasn't like, you're never going to amount to anything. You're going to be a loser. And so many people have done that to their kids, or they just tell you, look, you're not going to lose weight. And doctors said that you're never going to come off insulin. Don't even try. It's like, well, why not try? Why not try to be healthier?
I think I didn't care at that time. I think you lose your self-respect quite a lot. You don't look after yourself, and I think that it's almost, I'm always careful to say this because I don't want to give the wrong impression, but it's almost like self-harm. It's actually quite like punishing yourself for unhappiness, or whatever that looks like, and you just eating to dull the pain, a bit like alcohol or drugs. And I honestly believe, and I know Bitten Johnson talks about this, that sugar's a gateway drug to other things. And I like to drink, and I loved ultra processed food, and I'd be quite happy going down to the local takeaway and having whatever burger joint and having whatever I wanted and more than I should. And so I think you just become, when you're not in a good place, generally, I think it all sort of spirals a bit downward. You don't look after yourself, you don't have the self-respect, you don't care enough about yourself. And I think what this journey has given me is more self-respect, more discipline, more clarity of thought, more gratitude for what we have around us, and what you have in your life, your relationship. My wife is a brilliant woman who I love dearly, and she's fantastic, and and all that's really important, really important.
Yeah, having the support. I mean, Tro and I talk about it a lot on our other podcast, saying, hey, look, the biggest things we see, people get stressed, and you say, I need somebody, I need, just like someone who's going through alcohol, quitting alcohol or drugs or whatever it is. When that's your stress relief. So figure out, okay, maybe I go for a walk through the countryside rather than eating cookies for breakfast, right? So it's I was thinking, what do you guys call it? Biscuits, right? Biscuits for breakfast. So I think it's one of those things that's so important that and I think enjoying the journey at some point, like for the walk, enjoying the walk, not like, oh, I have to do this to lose weight, I have to do this. When you start to enjoy it and not say, okay, this is my penance or punishment for enjoying that, whatever I had over the weekend. A lot of people see it that way rather than saying, okay, look, I want to feel better.
Yeah. It's discipline, actually. It's a discipline to get up. And I know I walk the dogs, so they have to go anyway, but it is a discipline. And I feel I've cheated myself if I don't go in the morning now. And I'll be out 7 a.m. every morning, rain or shine, an hour's walk. And really, it's just a mindful time. It's found time. I'll listen to you guys maybe on a Monday when the podcast drops. I'll listen to your latest episode or other podcasts. It's found time that I've now got. But actually, sometimes I just enjoy not having anything, just listening to the birds or looking around. You've seen the pictures I put up on Twitter. I live in a rural. It's a town, but it's a rural town. So everywhere just outside the town is all farms, and and they're only small. They're not the big, huge farms. They're just little small holdings, few cattle, few sheep. But I love watching over the course of the last year and maybe more longer during lockdown. I started to notice the cattle, the calves being born, the lambs being born, seeing them getting bigger, seeing them playing, seeing them. And I was trying to document that on my daily walks, just to see, there were young calves, and then there were calves that were a little bit older, and now they're fully milking cattle. It's truly remarkable, and it's a blessing to be able to do that. But that joyous piece of work around going out and enjoying those sights and smells and experiences only comes because I'm disciplined enough to do it every day.
Yeah, because you can sit in your house and miss out on all that stuff. And I think that's important, like what you're talking about. It's so true, like in our weight loss journeys, for instance, where people go, look, I lost 20 pounds and no one notices. And then they lose 22 pounds and everyone in the world says something.
Yeah.
But, when you're around someone all the time, you don't see it. So if you didn't see the calves all the time, you'd go out there and say, oh my gosh, they're cows now. What happened, right? Yeah. But you're there and you see the process. You see it. And I think a lot of what you're talking about is the process, like enjoying the process and saying, okay, I'm going to take one step at a time and get out there and do it.
Yeah, definitely. And I think that's that's part of the serenity that I've got now. I think the removal of sugar, banished permanently as far as I'm concerned, has allowed me to get some peace in my own head. And I don't want to overstate that. I don't want it to sound too woo-woo, but that's how it feels. It feels like I've got a new calmness about me now. I've got a new, things don't stress me as much, and I don't get as down. It's really just, you tend to be on the level of a bit more than I would have been in the past.
Yeah, I think that's an important thing. Yeah, that's an important one too, because it's the mood swings, it's the up and down of the sugars, it's the hormone changes, the cortisol, all the stress hormones and all that. And it's, people don't appreciate it enough. And that's part of why I want to do this podcast, because, for instance, I'll give you a perfect example. Yesterday, I have a guy he's really one of my favorite patients, great guy, has some struggles. We've talked a lot about work stress. So he just got a huge business opportunity where, he has an unbelievable opportunity in front of them, but it's a lot of work and a lot of stress. But it's really interesting is when I watch his sugars, all of a sudden on Monday, his sugars spiked from running in the 80s here to like 120, 130. And he goes, look, I'm cutting my carbs. I'm eating and the stress of all this stuff. And then he made a decision and then accepted this contract, and boom, his sugars dropped right down after. So it's amazing. It's not all what you're eating. It's the stress and the cortisol and it doesn't have to be bad stress. Any stress can do it. Right.
Yeah.
But you start realizing, getting out there and just going for a walk and just having that hour of, for some of us it's reading your Bible or devotions or listening to music or just yoga or meditating, whatever it is, where you get that peace at some point. Yeah. Because constantly being under stress is not a good thing.
No, and it just gives you the time, and you're going to have that space to yourself, because at 7 a.m. here, it's nearly dark. It was dark until the light saving came in last week. Now we're heading back that way, and over the winter it'll be dark in the morning. But it doesn't bother me. It's still my time to just take it all in. And funnily enough, what you also see is, and I've never seen this before, is the changing of the seasons and the light diminishing in the mornings, and then in, say, January, we'll start to see the light more. It'll be lighter and then lighter and then lighter and then lighter. So it's a kind of I don't know, it's like a pagan thing. I don't know. It's just, you start to know that you've got to the end of the cycle, end of your Christmas is around the end of the year, and then you start to click over, and it won't be long before it's spring. But I think even the last time I was on in episode 111, I remember Tro saying to me, I said, I'm surprised how I've started thinking like this. He said, God, you didn't even have time to think about anything like that. You were so stressed with everything else going on, and your sugars and this and that and the other, and now I've got time to think about it. I've got time to enjoy stuff, enjoy life, enjoy the experiences, which I never had, and that's come from having the discipline to do my work, and also to be more, I've been working from home now for 18 months, and I actually find it really, really good. Some people haven't enjoyed it at all. Some people find it very difficult, but I've found that as long as I can compartmentalize my day, so I've got work day and home day, and they're different. I can shut the door on this room at 5 o'clock or half past 5 or 6 or whatever time I'm finishing. That's it. I'm done then. This isn't a public space. This is a spare room, so I'm not trying to do this on the kitchen table, or while everyone else is working. I can use this space and this time for work, and then we finish, and then we go on to the next part of our day. And I've just found it to be so much easier to do that once you've not got the sugar distractions going on. I think that's, and the stresses and that sort of stuff. I'm not saying we don't get stressed. Everyone has stresses, new job, moving house, elderly relatives, sickness in the family. It's all that sort of stuff is micro, there's little micro stresses all the way through, but as long as you can manage them, you'll come out a better place.
Yeah, and I think you raised a really important point, and this is something I really worked at, because I was working 16-hour days for sure. I still work long days. It's just a different stress level for me, right? Because I love just to talk to people like this. This is what I do with my patients. We have talks like this about life and what matters and how do we stay on track and all those things. That's so important. It's not just throwing a drug. Oh, here, this will take your appetite away. Because why do you have the appetite? Like, I think that we have to get to the root cause of everything. But I know for a lot of years, I would come, like my wife would always say that. She goes, I know you work hard and you have a stressful job, but when you come home, you're present, you're with us, you're not distracted on the computer, you're not doing other stuff, you're focused on your family and what matters. And I think a lot of us go home every night, we just watch TV, we never have a discussion, we never play a game together, we never laugh. And I think that's a huge important part of it. This too is just having that human connection. And I think what's important that you're saying is being able to say, okay, work is over, I'm here present. Because a lot of people, I know a lot of doctors for sure, they go home and their wife's talking to them, like, oh yeah, let me finish my notes. You can just talk and I'll listen type thing. Yeah. And it's hard when you're not looking at someone and connecting. There is something to that that's so critical.
Yeah, it's important. And I'm a big believer that at least one meal a day we have together. There's none of this separate times for dinner. If she's working late, I'll wait. If I'm working late, she'll wait. We'll have a dinner together. Breakfast is an interesting concept, but I've no idea what that is now, because I fast until 2 o'clock in the afternoon, or 3 if I feel it of it. But yeah, so breakfast we don't sit together because I'm out walking before I go to work. But in the evening we definitely sit down, and while I've been working here and if she comes home at lunchtime, we'll sit and have a cup of coffee and then I'll go back to work. We try and spend some time together, or at some point to make sure how's your day been. If it's nothing more than that, at least it's you've had that time to throw things around or get it off your chest or whatever it is. It's important. It's important to be able to do that.
Just being able to be heard and hear other people. I think for us doctors, I know me. Whenever you tell me something, I want to say, okay, here's the solution. Here's what you do. And I'm thinking about my how I'm going to fix the problem, rather than saying, okay, you just want to talk to me about what's going on right now. I don't need to fix this problem. And us guys are not very good at that. I mean, it's really hard to, well, just do this, just do that. And you want to throw out solutions rather than saying, yeah, that's got to be hard for you. That's got to be tough. I get it. Yeah. I get what you're saying. So it's a hard thing, because a lot of us, and I think this translates over into Twitter, right? And I've seen you, the nice person you are, people attack you and they say, you don't know anything about weight loss. You lost 210 pounds. You lost plus that 300 pounds if you count the 80 you gained back. And you say, well, you know something about it, obviously. And when people say, you have no idea what you're talking about, instead of saying, hey, I'm happy for your success, congratulations, what did you do different? Instead of saying what you're doing is crazy.
Yeah, exactly. And you just, I kind of let it go now. I try and just let it pass, because I don't want to waste my energy on negative chat anymore. I'll put my view across, and then if people like it, great. And if they don't like it, it's still my view. I'm not changing it. We all fear this moment of being cancelled, but do you know what? If that's what it is, it is difficult for guys like us, and this is a difficult subject, I suppose, but things when we were 20, things were different. There was a lot less, everything goes, it was a little more fluid, and people could be, the what's now unacceptable was probably acceptable, in the sense of how you might address people, or you might talk about things, or even just fellas standing around telling dirty jokes. Nowadays you have to look at your audience before and check your story and just see if you're going to offend anybody, and especially if you write it down on Twitter, you're just waiting for a mob to pile on. And I know you've had that recently, where you're putting something out and you just get mobbed by angry people. And I'm honestly convinced if they ate less sugar, they wouldn't be so angry.
Well, yeah, and I think that's part of it too. And I think if they're happy in their life, like, I don't feel the need to go and attack everyone in the world. Say, hey, you're vegan and you're happy, cool. You're Muslim and you're happy, cool. It's working for you. I'm not gonna try to tell you you're wrong if it's working. If you're a total disaster, I say, hey, have you ever thought about maybe not having donuts every day for breakfast and see what happens, or giving up that soda maybe? But I think it's a hard thing. As a matter of fact, for me, I've really if I put something on Twitter, I don't go back and look. People go, oh my gosh, this guy was being a jerk. I'm like, I don't need to see it, because I'm not going to argue with someone that's, here's the evidence, here what, I don't typically say stuff without researching it and understanding. And being a doctor for almost 20 years now, I think I've learned a few things about medicine and how the immune system works. All these things we taught, and all of a sudden they say, oh, that none of that matters anymore. I say, well, it does matter. It does. There's certain things that you kind of say, well, we have to question when there's bad stuff going on, but it's a hard thing because I think what's happening, what we're seeing, and I see it a lot, where anyone who disagrees with me is giving disinformation, because I'm the only truth. Instead of saying, hey, we disagree. I've learned a lot. There's people that I thought were crazy that now I listen and go, wow, you know what? They were right. Now, 2 years ago when they said that, maybe there is something to that. And I have to look at that.
Yeah, exactly. You do have to think to yourself, just check yourself, because the easy thing is to be in a group where everybody agrees with you. Gary Taubes talks about that a lot. You can't, you're only, we get on because we both think we're smart because we agree with each other. But I actually on purpose keep people on my Twitter feed who I just completely disagree with. But it's almost like a bit of balance in my head. I'll go, okay, look, I see what you're doing there, but it's not my thing. But I haven't managed to get to zealot status. Are you there now, or are you just using Tro to get to zealot status?
Yeah, no, it's funny because people, I think what happens, this is like anything. Like people make a comment about someone else, like Sean Baker. People make a comment, he's a jerk. I go, listen to his story. Listen to his story and what he's done. I mean, when you hear it, I mean, for me, I was surprised when I go back and anyone who hasn't listened, go back and listen to it. He's a big muscle carnivore, and he gets in people's faces. But when you hear his story, I said, why are you fight with people? Because for 3 years, I tried to be reasonable and they attack me every day. So you have to stand up for yourself at some point. And here's the science, here's the data. But this guy's a war hero. He saved, and I think the thing I love about him is he was working on the enemies who were trying to kill him.
Yeah.
That's what a doctor is supposed to do. You help that person in front of you. You don't say, what's your religious belief? What's your sexual preference? No, you say, hey, I'm going to help this person as much as I can, and let the authorities or whoever else wants to figure out the legalities of things. They can deal with that part. And that's what I loved about him, is saying, hey, look, I'm here to treat that patient in front of me. And so, and if we lose that heart for our patient, then we shouldn't be doctors. That's my opinion, is that you treat that person, not say, well, you made it a bad life. You gained a bunch of weight, you smoke, so you deserve lung cancer. I'm not treating it. So, well, heck, they're in the situation. You can't change it now, right? No one's beyond hope. No one's beyond help. And you say, let me help this person as much as I can, even if they made bad choices their entire life and they've been a loser, and that's what my faith tells me too. It's like, hey, you get the last second, you can say, hey, look, I want to change what I'm doing. I don't want to.
Exactly. Yeah, and I think that's true. I think you have to be able to realize that you can't change what happened yesterday. And I think I only learned that on the second time around with the weight loss, that what can I do? I can't, there's no point in beating myself up about it. It happened, and therefore it happened. Let's just move on. There's no point in worrying about what happened yesterday. It's not where I live. I live in the next interaction, not the previous one. And there's things I've done in the past I'm probably not very proud of, and you have to just go, okay, I learned from it. And I think that's the difference, when you get to a point where you go, yeah, that wasn't very smart, but I learned from it. And whether that's anything, just you learn to do new tasks. That's exciting. If you do new things, or I put up a post a couple of weeks ago about putting up a new fence. Like, for some farming guys that'd be like nothing, but for somebody like me who never, I was talking to somebody actually recently at my I've been doing my family tree, and I've managed to get back quite a long way, and I'm the first in my first generation in my family for over 400 years who has never got his hands dirty, never worked with the soil, never, and all of a sudden you go, God, what this, have I advanced the cause, or am I missing out on something that I should have been doing? And so whilst I don't accept that, I'm very accepting of my failings in the past, I'm also not, I'm aware that they're there and that they're instrumental in making me what I do now and how I am today. I think you learn from it.
And I think that's the point you learn from it. Everyone's afraid of making a mistake. If you're so afraid of making a mistake, you never try anything because you're going to screw it up. First time I try anything, I mess it up usually. Then I go, oh, okay, that's how you do it. Learning whatever, changing a bike tire, you mess it up and you go, okay, and then you learn instead of saying, I've never made a mistake, or you say, this is the way I've always done it. And someone else says, well, here's an easier way. Maybe think about, no, I'm not doing it that way.
Yeah, I had cause recently, or a year or so ago, a person in the village gave me a salmon. I don't like to ask where it came from, but anyway, it came full salmon, and I'd never prepared a salmon. So out came YouTube, and I just looked at what it was, and but I probably wouldn't have had the confidence to do that. I'd have probably taken it to somebody and said, oh, would you do that for me? But now you just think, well, let's just try. What's not to gain from trying and doing something, so now I would be quite happy doing it again, because I learned a new skill. And if you learn a new skill, you're like, yay, this is great. I've learned a new skill. And
building a fence building a fence and doing it right. That's a huge deal. That is a big, as a matter of fact, I'll tell you, one of my good friends the other night, we were together and she said, Brian, like, she pulled me aside. She goes, I painted my toenails today. And I was like, and that's great. My wife does it all the time. Right. And she said, no, I couldn't do it before. I couldn't bend over to do it. Now I can. And another friend of mine, the same thing. She says, now I'm on the rowing machine. I didn't realize my belly was always in the way. Now it's so much easier. And I was like, wow, that is so, like, those kind of things that you appreciate where you came from.
Breaking into a sweat, tying your shoelaces up. That's, you go, oh, well, hang on a minute. I don't sweat like I used to when I have to tie my shoelaces up, or even get out of the chair, or, if I have to nip and do to run to get something. You can do it now where before you couldn't. It's amazing. And you don't realize that until, I think I was listening to an interview with, I think it was Black Carnivore, and she was on with, I shouldn't mention other podcasts, obviously.
No, absolutely. I love all those guys.
With Tony Hampton.
With Tony Hampton, he's a great guy.
He's a cool dude.
If I got paid for the podcast, I'd probably be upset, but yeah, it doesn't really matter.
No, so and she was saying how different it was in her life now between before and then. And I've heard Tro talk about that, thinking you still have that fat guy in your head when you go between a gap and you go, I'll never get through that. Or you got to pull your pants up and you think, I'm never going to get in there, and then they just go, and you do them up and you go, that's unbelievable. They used to be that wide and now they're that wide.
Yeah, it's incredible. That's incredible. As a matter of fact, one of my patients yesterday, we were talking, and I was looking at it, and I didn't really realize, like, she's lost 85 pounds. And so, but I looked at her first goal when we met, almost a year ago now, but her goal was to get less than 200 pounds. She's 176 pounds right now.
Fantastic.
And you think, wow, you passed your goal of what you really thought was possible. She just wanted to see a 1 on the scale. Now she's like, okay, now I want to get to where I want. And she looks great, and she's working out, and she's putting on muscle mass. It's amazing. I see the difference in her as a person, like her ability to communicate. She feels good about it. She's smiling more. And when you see that, it's like, wow. I mean, it's not about the weight. It's about having that joy, that peace, and that,
it is. Peace is exactly the word I was going to use. It's exactly what it is. And it gives you the peace of mind, and it gives you the serenity to be able to just enjoy life for what it is. And, with the knowledge that you don't want to go back where that was, but you want to be able to. And now I feel obliged to share it with people who want to hear the story. And that's why I love doing this sort of stuff with you guys, because I just want to be able to share that information and evangelize on how you can do it. And it's not one size fits all. I mean, it's really interesting in Gary Taub's new book, Case for Keto. He talks about that. It's a spectrum. And, the skinny doctor who never had a weight problem in their life, it might work just to move more and eat less, but for us on the other end of the spectrum, it doesn't work, and you have to learn where that is. And I think we're starting to see in the UK and Ireland, and now we're starting to see a move towards more tailored, more bespoke advice, which you probably now can give in the new situation that you probably couldn't do in the public sphere, because you have the time now, the bandwidth to be able to have those conversations that you wouldn't have been able to have. You know, I'm always so impressed with David Unwin, who can still do this stuff in 15 minutes. Whereas, you know, you guys have, you know, you've changed your model, and, you know, it seems to work for you now.
Yeah, if I was as smart as Dr. Unwin and had his kindness, man, I mean, no one wants to disappoint him, and he's amazing. And he's weathered the storm. And you talk about a strong person who just does it. You know, he does what he does, and he just loves on people, and he's kind. And he took a lot of arrows. You know, a lot of people said this guy's going to kill everyone. You know, I just interviewed Asim Malhotra, which is coming out on Low Carb MD. Cool. And it's amazing hearing his, like, he said, I've been on the front page of the newspaper and they're saying I'm killing everyone, I'm dangerous, and I'm terrible. And I was like, I'm looking at the science and the data, and I'm looking at patient, and he has a ton of clinical experience, and he's telling them to get, you know, the fast food out of the hospitals, and they said that's dangerous. It's like, well, wait a minute, let me think about this. Like, where are we at? And the other thing that was really important, and this goes along with what we're talking about, is we were talking about the importance of metabolic health, right? What you're achieving with your journey, and hopefully we're all achieving doing that. And the number one comorbidity for COVID death is metabolic disease, meaning low vitamin D, high insulin level, high sugar levels, obesity, diabetes. Number two, depression and anxiety. That is incredible. Like, when you think about that, you know, being depressed and stressed, like for you, I think of you going for a walk in the countryside, and I'm glad a lot of the times you don't listen to us. You just say, okay, I'm just going to listen to the birds. I think that's where I find my peace a lot. I'll just go for a hike by myself, even without my dogs to distract me sometimes. And I'll just observe, listen to the birds, hear stuff, look at the trees or whatever. You see, you know, you say, oh, I never saw that before, right? So I think it's so important, because we're such a distracted society. And I think that's a huge problem for us, that we can't just sit and be. We have to be checking. Like, I'll tell you, I've struggled with that lately, because I go, why do I look at Twitter so often? Why is it that I have a break, 5-minute break, instead of doing other stuff? I'm like, oh, let's see what Ken's doing on Twitter, right? Part of it's because I get there's stuff I love, and there's parts I can't stand. And so you start looking at the balance of saying, okay, is it worth it or not? Am I better off going for a walk in the countryside than sitting there for an hour arguing with someone who's just going to argue every point I make? It's not worth it. It's not worth your time.
It's interesting. I noticed that you do get a bit of heat. Well, in equal measure, you'll get heat about your faith, and you'll get, you know, and so you've got people who are with you and people who are against you. And, you know, I've often heard people say, you know, like, how can a science guy like a doctor have faith? And but we all have a faith of some description. We all have this, you know, we have this, whatever that looks like, whatever, you know, heaven, Valhalla, we all have a place. And some people do, and some people just go, look, when time comes, I'm gone. And, you know, it's interesting to see that is so divisive now. And I worry about that a bit, that we can't have a discourse, a discussion about something as simple as how you conduct your beliefs, or not, as the case may be. And I think it's very difficult. It must be very difficult for people. And
well, I think, you know, I think it's a good to me, it's a good thing, because this podcast got birthed out of that, because I got attacked so strongly by saying, hey, keep the faith, have some hope. To talk about hope and faith, and people would attack me for saying have hope. What do I tell you? Don't have hope and be miserable and hate life. And the people who are attacking me are the very people who need it the most, which is the ironic part, is because they're sitting there. And I'm telling you, I have people that follow me, and very rarely, I really don't like to block people. I do if they're totally unreasonable and disrespectful, right? That I don't mind arguing. But if you have reasonable, I want an atheist guy there who I actually like him a lot, but he was attacking me for a while. Then I said, look, either tone it down or I'm going to block you, because I don't want to have this argument. If you don't believe, cool. Let me believe if I'm in delusional land and it makes me live life better, I don't care. If I have a delusion that you know, that Big Brother's coming to help me and everything's going to be okay, then let me live in that delusion, right? Even if it is delusional. So I think it's one of those points. If it works for you, fine. If it's good, if your diet works for you, cool. But it's amazing how many of those people, you know, I think, because I look back and I think, wow, it's interesting because the people who were doing that before were the church forcing it on other people. And like you said, you want to be an evangelist to people who want to hear. Different than I'm going to be an evangelist to everyone, whether they want to hear it or not. I'm going to shine my light and I'm going to tell you, you can't have cookies. Look at that. No one wants to hear that. So, you know, when I go into places now, people will laugh and they go, oh, he's here. Put away your cookies. Right. And I'm like, I don't care. Do what you want to do. Live your life. If you're healthy and good, you know, if I could eat like that, I would, but I can't. So, you know, I think part of it is, and that's how I feel about faith too. It's like, look, let me believe what I want to believe. And my life experience has told me, I never look back and go, man, that religion really screwed me up on that one. Right. I feel so, I never look at life that way. I look at it and go, man, being nice to people, even if they're a jerk, if I'm nice to them back, you know, I don't regret that ever, because that's your character. At some point you go, look, I could attack everyone.
It's interesting. You know, people say, you know, do you have faith? And I suppose, you know, funnily enough, I wrote one thing down today, which was the definition of faith in the dictionary, which is a belief in something intangible or incapable of being proved. And I likened it to a leap of faith. So, you know, I don't know whether they're parables, whether these stories that have been passed back over thousands of years are illustrative stories, or whether that's true. But I have to take I have to put it through my lens of how I feel about it. And it's interesting, you know, if you ask me straight up, are you a religious guy? I'd say, well, no, I was brought up in a church-going family, not religiously church-going every Sunday, but you know, my mother had been in the church choir, and you know, so she was a kind of, you know, we were sort of casual without being Christian, if you like. And but it's interesting because I notice a lot of my language is, I use blessed, I use redemption, I use faith, I use words like that, hope. You know, these are scattered throughout the literature, the texts, you know, whether that be in the Quran or whether it's in the holy books in Judaism, or whether it's in the Bible. It's there, and it's really interesting. And you know, so I suppose, you know, and then I look at my record collection and I see all this Baptist music, or you know, soul music, but it's got a spiritual vibe to it, and you think, or country music with a bit spiritual vibe to it. You go, there's something going on there. I don't know what it is, and I don't know how to encapsulate it. I don't know how to articulate it, but I do know there's something there. There's something there that's just sitting there, and
that maybe gives you peace, or you say, hey, that relaxes me, I enjoy it, you know. But I think you could say the same thing going to listen to the birds and going for a walk and looking at the trees and watching the animals grow. There's something that we're innately wired for. And I think throwing that out of medicine to say, well, you should know better, I was like, you know what, you know how many of the diseases I treat are because of people who are spiritually broken and depressed and anxious and stressed? You know how much physiology there is to it? Like I just told you, my patient, his sugars go crazy when he's going through his stressful time. It's not that he's eating too much. It's not that. So people just don't understand there's a huge physiologic. And I have to look at the whole body, not just say, okay, you know, you're going through a divorce and you're stressed out and you're drinking too much. We're not going to talk about that. We're just going to talk about here's a pill for your heartburn. Here's one for your, you know, ulcers. And we've lost that discussion of saying, okay, why are we having this? Why are you eating too much? Brian, why are you snacking at night? Right? Are you just hungry? Are you tired? Are you bored? Are you depressed? Are you sad? And until we tap into that, we're in trouble. So as a doctor, if you don't want me talking about what's going on at, like, all the time, I've always done this, and it was at my own detriment, because once you open the can of worms, you got to discuss it. Like, you know, a lot of times I'll ask people, how's life? How are you doing? What are you doing for fun these days? And I could tell you by their answer, if they're depressed, they're anxious, they're stressed, what's going on in life. And then we can have a dialogue. And sometimes people, I'll tell you, some of the best medicine I practice is someone sharing this secret that they have, or this, what they're holding on to, or that their husband's cheating on them and no one knows. All these things that there's healing that comes with that, of tapping into it, rather than saying, I'm just ignoring it, the elephant in the room, we're not going to pay attention to it. Well, let's talk about the elephant in the room. That's what happens. And sometimes once you address the elephant and people see it, then you say, okay, like that guy with you, just making that comment, say, hey, this is what you are. You're always going to be like this. Love yourself for who you are. which isn't
Yes.
bad advice, but it's saying, well, you've taken your ability now. Do I want to change? Do I want to be different than what I am? Do I accept myself as I am and say, okay, I'm happy and I'm good and I'm healthy and I'm fine? Or do you want to make yourself better?
Yeah.
You
Yeah.
know?
Make your, and there's no question that it was the right thing to do. It was the right thing for me. It was the right thing for my family, because, all of a sudden I'm more, I suppose when you look at your purpose, what's your purpose in life? And I can never articulate it better than, I just want to be helpful. I want to be useful. That's what so in that, if I can do a fence or gut a fish, or I can do putting on, just DIY around the house, put up a shelf or put up a picture or whatever it is, you that wouldn't have been a thing 15 years ago. It just wouldn't. It wouldn't, because I just wouldn't have the appetite to do it. I wouldn't have the drive to do it, and I wouldn't have that self-respect to do it. I would have just got a third party in, a man that can, who can fix this up, and I'll give him $50 for the privilege. Now I get pleasure from doing it because I know I've done it myself, and that was never apparent before.
Yeah, I think that's so important to be able to do something. Even if it's not perfect, oh yeah, I screwed this one up, let's do it, and but you fix it and you figure it out. And I think that's what's important. I think for me, really, it's not that person who's going to attack me for my faith. What it is I'm doing it for that person who's sitting on the fence going, someone like you goes, look, I hear spiritual stuff, and is that good for you? Whatever, don't force it on me. But that person goes, maybe low carb, maybe I'll stop drinking soda for a week and see what happens. Or maybe I'll try this. Maybe that's a good idea. Let me see. I've never tried that before. Like you tried something different. You could have went back and did all the weight loss stuff that failed for you forever and ever. Or you say, well, let me try something different. So that's my message is for those people who say, look, I'm failing, but I don't know what to do. Give me the tools. Because we're finding if we give you the tools and we can help you and you have some support, you can do great things like what you're doing, what you've accomplished. How many people sit back and say, man, if I can only lose 200 pounds, if I can only do that, but I can't, why can't you? Like, let's, if I could only come off insulin, one of my ladies said, if I can only come off insulin, she was told over and over she would never come off insulin. She's off insulin now. You want to talk to someone who's happy, right? That's it. And going back to faith too, faith is believing this belief in something you can't prove. And so how do you want me to prove it to you? I could just tell you my experience. You could just say your experience. I can't prove it to you. Of course not, because it's unprovable and you can't prove it wrong either. So all these people have gone through their whole life dedicated to either proving it right or proving it wrong. Well, might just live your life at some point.
Exactly.
And let that be the
example. Be you, and just that's enough. And if it's not enough, change it. Try to change it. Find people who will help you change it. Whether that's your doctor or a counselor or just a friend. Just talk. And we shout too much now. We shout at each other rather than actually just talking about stuff. And that's been a very much a change for me over the years, and I can only put that down to the I don't know whether the discipline came from whether the sugar reduction created the discipline or the discipline created the sugar reduction, but I imagine it's a sort of mixture of both.
The cycle. Yeah, it's both. Yeah, it's both. You get
now
hormones, right?
Yeah. You're on an even keel.
I'll tell you, man.
An even keel.
That's why I love to hear that. What my patients, and especially if you go back to our, episode number 10 and number 13, when we first started out, it was so controversial. As a matter of fact, an Englishman doctor attacked me. We're saying, look, it seems like my patient's mood stabilizing. They seem like they're doing better. And he's like, oh, you should have your license revoked. You're crazy and all this stuff. And all the science is supporting that now. The science is supporting that. And people like you go, yeah, I just feel better. I was saying, you don't feel better. It can't be. Well, you do. I don't know what to tell you. It is. What do we see? So it's one of those things. I think we've lost the ability to say, look, here's an observation I'm seeing. Let's look into this. Then you do studies and then you prove it. But first you have to observe something and say, let's look and see if there is a correlation. Maybe there's none. Maybe we're all living in a fantasy world. And that's the same way I look at religion, all these things. But I think when people's values are attacked or questioned, for me, I really do. I love it when someone goes, why do you believe that? And I go, here's why I believe it. I'll tell you not. But then they're going to argue every point that you make. right? How you're not right. And instead of saying, oh, okay, that worked for you. Okay, maybe, like for me, looking back at hearing about Jason Fung and Gary Taubes, like, okay, let me look at this. Let me look at it at least. But once you say it's not true. So, people pass judgments, say, okay, listen to the podcast and see when I've ever said that, when I've ever been a zealot, when I've ever said, hey, this is the only way, there's no other way.
Yeah.
But people will paint you that way because they look at things as one way. And so if you disagree with them, you're the enemy. And so what I love about Twitter is there's people that one day I think they're a jerk. The next day I go, oh, that's smart. Yeah, I agree with them on that. That's a good point, right? So so I don't block people because I disagree with them on one topic. If they're disrespectful and cussing at me all the time, like, right? If I was on the other side of Tro, I would have blocked him for sure at some point. But look, I'm not dealing with you calling me the F word and stuff. Like I would have. Like if someone did that to me now, it's like, I don't cuss at you. I'll show you respect and we may disagree, but I think that's something we really have to, as a society, address and say, okay, how do I respectfully disagree with you and not say you're a jerk? That's why your wife left.
I use a term. I use a term that it doesn't make you a bad bloke. It doesn't make you a bad guy to be wrong or to be ill-informed on one thing. Because again, it's a spectrum. You know loads of stuff, but you might be wrong on one thing. There's 50, 60, 100 other things that you are right on. So you've got to kind of balance that out and say, look, I was misunderstood. I'm sorry about that, and move on. I'm not going to flog myself. I'm not going to hit myself with twigs because I was wrong. I just was, and I just say, look, mea culpa, my fault, made a mistake.
Those are the people I want to follow. The ones who go, you know what? Like Tim Noakes, look at Gary Fettke, Tim Noakes, all these people who went through all kinds of stuff because they said, look, what I was saying before was wrong. And now I'm doing the right thing. Now I get it. I've seen it. I've seen the data. Now I've opened my mind to this. And the same thing goes spiritually. The same thing goes for all kinds of stuff. You say, man, I used to be a total idiot on this topic. And I'm not afraid to say, man, I thought you were nuts when I met you. But look, now I get what you're saying now. Before I didn't understand. So Jason Fung, there's a lot of people who don't understand what he's saying, what the points he's making, because they don't understand the science, and they're saying he's crazy. Well, just because you don't understand the science doesn't make him crazy. He's clearly having clinical benefits for the people who benefit from what he's doing. And the people who don't benefit, guess what? They move on to the next thing. They go on to the next person who's going to help.
It's funny. Somebody said to me a couple of weeks ago, so you do keto? I went, yeah. Are you in ketosis? I said, no. Don't ask me. I don't measure it.
Yeah.
I just eat my less than 20 grams a day of carbs, and
it's working, and I don't care.
Yeah, and that's why, whilst I do enjoy the nerdy sort of Ben Bickman style sort of information, and I love Ben and I love listening to him. He's a fantastic person to listen to, or Dave Feldman, or but it's really nerdy, but it's nice to listen to it. And then, but I don't actually need in 2021, I don't need a double-blind study to tell me what I know works for me. That's, like, I don't care what Kevin Hall says. It doesn't matter, because it works for me. Or Spencer Nagowski and all these crowd who say, and I'm going, look, it works for me. And that's all I can do.
And that's exactly my view on religion. Hey, it works for me. If it works for me, and you want to know anything about it, cool. If you don't, great. If you hate everything I say, why do you follow me? You follow me just to torment me? Is that that's what you do in life? Like, I don't follow people that I can't stand and I want to argue every point with them. There's no point of that. I follow people and I have a lot of people that I follow that, like you said, it's like, I don't have to agree, but I'm not going to argue every point. I go, okay, they kind of see it differently than me, but that's okay. That's okay. If it gives you peace to think you turn to dust at the end of your life and that nothing you do matters, okay. I don't believe that. I think there's things that, I believe in justice. And I agree with grace. I look at it this way. I look at it because they're talking about canceling people. They go, this guy was a bad person, so don't listen to their music anymore. You go, oh my gosh. Who's the first perfect person who's never made a mistake or never made someone upset or never? We take down everything, every statue, at some point you go, okay, we're imperfect. What do we learn from the mistake that guy made? Don't make that mistake. I was just reading about David. I'm like, David killed Goliath. He did all these great things. Then he cheated on his wife and he killed this guy and he did all this crazy stuff. You're like, wow, so does nothing he did before matter anymore? Or what, it's a hard thing because none of us are perfect. I mean, if anyone claims to be perfect, I really want to meet them and talk to them. I bet, you know, and I always thought that was funny. It's like, could you, Jesus one time stood up and goes, do any of you think I've committed sin or done bad stuff? And I was thinking, could you imagine in front of all my friends, like, I've never done anything wrong. And they're like, Brian, remember?
Remember that? But remember that time?
Evolve very quickly. You don't, I keep saying, it's like, don't ask a question you don't want to know the answer to. Because if people say, hey, do you think this is the right thing to do? It's, Brian, you know, but you know, and also the other thing with faith is like, did I know my practice would be successful? Did I know? I had faith that it would be. I didn't know. I mean, it could be that everything, it was in the middle of COVID, by the way. And I look back and say, wow, man, this is the best thing I've done, just to be able to have time to talk to you right now. Right.
Yeah.
So, I think, you know, you look at it and you have faith. People, I'm telling you, you have faith every time you drive through that green light that the other person has a red light and they're stopping. Right. There's faith that where you get on the airplane, you have faith in that pilot that they're going to land you. There's faith. You just don't think about it that way, but it is. You have a certain, you have faith in your doctor who's going to do that open heart surgery, or otherwise you wouldn't be doing it.
Yeah, exactly. And you just have to, you know, it's a working assumption. It's a hunch, actually. It's a hunch that you feel that it's, you know, if there's something past what we understand, and, you know, I see it from a, you know, I see the scientific, but I don't, the mysteries of other things that you can't explain, you know, what does that come down to? What does that look like? Who knows what that looks like? Because, you know, it's interesting. You I suppose that's what you know, you wonder what, even those walks that I do, and you see nature change, and yes, it's a science, but it's also art, and it's also humanities, and it's all of the things rolled up into one. It's you know, life's a rich tapestry, as they say, and, you know, all of this is interlinked and not linked at all. And, you know, I just think that's, you know, it's I'm very lucky. I'm very lucky, to be honest, to see the errors of my ways in what I did. It's allowed me to be a different, I think, a better person. And I think that's just, I'm not the one to judge that. Somebody else will judge that for me, not me. You know, I just carry on doing what I'm doing. And if people like what I do.
Yeah. Right. You know, a friend of mine, I don't know if you heard me say this before, a friend of mine is a pastor, and he said, you know, Brian, and ultimately it's all about the potato salad. And I said, what are you talking about? He said, the potato salad. He goes, I do a lot of funerals, and eventually you die, they put you in the ground, you get cremated, whatever happens to you, whatever. He said, but they go back to Aunt Betty's house, and he said, for some reason, they always have potato salad for the most part, or whatever, meatballs or whatever you're going to have. And then they talk about your life. They're talking about your life and what matters. Did you help that person that day? Were you kind? Were you decent? Were you? No one's gonna say, "Well, yeah, did you see how many cars he had when he died? Oh my gosh!" Or whatever. And like, what matters is walking the countryside and enjoying life and saying, "Yeah, I think I'm making a difference. I think I'm helping someone out there." Right? That's what matters ultimately. Because the most selfish people are the most miserable. The ones who attack you the most, I have grace for them, because I say, you know, they can't be happy to attack you over a silly thing you say, because you could put anything on there and say, "This is a stone." They go, "That's a rock." Here's the definition of a stone. And, you know, and you can argue forever, or you could just say, oh yeah, you think it's a stone, cool, right? That's fine.
Yeah,
exactly. And I would make the point too with you is that when you started keto and low carb and all these things, it was out of faith, because you didn't know it was going to work for you. You believed it would. But then once you have the evidence of what you're doing is working, then you say, okay, now I believe, because it's working for you. I don't care what everyone else says. It's so applicable to faith or whatever it is. Like, hey, this works for me. Okay, cool. You could say it doesn't work, but it's working for me. Okay.
But
cool.
most, and I've heard Gary Taub say this a lot, it's most docs that believe it have been through the conversion experience of low carb. Most people who, you know, and you guys are the, you know, you guys and Tony and you know, and Brett and all these guys who do the podcast, they're evangelizing because they saw the light. Now I'm really using religious terminology, but that's how I see it. It's seeing the light and going, okay, I get it now. You know.
And I apply that to all my life, is saying I can't unsee what I've seen. I've seen things that I can't explain. The only thing I could say is that there's a God who somehow intervened, because it doesn't make sense. I'm a scientist exactly because I'm a scientist, because it's the same thing. It's like, I'm a scientist, so I don't believe you could rub two pieces of dirt together and you get life out of it. I've seen the inside of the human body and the brain and how everything works. And you say, that's, if I see you know, I saw something that says, if you were the first one to land on the moon and you saw a Coke can, you think, who the heck put this here? You wouldn't say this naturally occurred.
Yeah.
And a Coke can is much more simplistic than the human body. So I think when you see something, you say, how does it just occur? I mean, a scientist has it. You have to have, there's always a black swan, as Dr. Unwin says, where you say, okay, if that's not true, how come this happened? Explain this to me. It totally goes against your paradigm, right? So I think all those things are so important, and that's why I love you're pleasant, you're kind, you're decent, you appreciate things, and that's why I think people need to hear your story. Like people like you, who we need to hear your story, not what the experts say. That doesn't
that's
work,
very
right?
kind of you. It's very kind of you, because I that's my purpose these days, is to share my story and hope that people understand that you're never beyond help, or you're never beyond hope. There's always a possibility. What is it? It says in Amazing Grace, I was lost and now I'm found. That's how I feel. Once
was blind, but now I see, right?
Now, once exactly. I was blind and now I see. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's good, man. We have to end. I have to ask you, since this is life's best medicine, what's life's best medicine for you? Where do you find your peace? Where do you find your joy? Where do you say, yeah, this is what's important in life, guys?
Friends, family, environment, joy, peace. That's, how can I make sure that I satisfy my need for those essentials, but also to provide those essentials in some way to others. I want people to go away from a conversation with me, or I want to be able to leave somebody in a better place than I found them.
Wow. Yeah. I totally agree.
Now I sound like Billy Graham. Sorry.
Yeah, but that's true. Yeah. But that's true. You want to help someone have a better life, and that's why this podcast is here. Say, hey, look, maybe this will help you. Maybe you think it's all crazy and you can laugh about me. I don't care if it gives you joy to laugh at me. I'm okay with that. But I think it's part of it saying, can I leave the world a better place? Can I leave you a better person? Do we get something from each other? And I think that's why we connected, because I get something I get joy from talking to you. I get peace, and I get hope, and I see what you've accomplished, and you have to have a voice for these. And I know your story is going to reach someone else who's 400, 500 pounds sitting there going, I can't do this. This is too much. I can't get off the couch. I'm too tired. Maybe I walk a little bit. Maybe I find something I enjoy. Maybe I listen to a podcast. Maybe but giving people a solution rather than saying there's a problem and there's no solution. I like to say there's a solution. We can make it better. At least we may not cure it, but we can make it better. We can take steps, and don't worry about yesterday, worry about tomorrow and today, right? Enjoy the moment too. And exactly. So I think people listening, you've got a lot of wisdom here from out in the back country, and be kind to yourself, be kind to others. I love what Ken's saying is, like, make that person a better person once you leave them, not a worse person or negative, and don't just focus on the bad, focus on the good part of it, focus on it, and say, hey, look, let me wake up and count my blessings. I know, and I just said it yesterday, I'm a nicer person. If I wake up and I look at my Bible and do devotions that morning, I'm a lot better person on Twitter than I am when it's just me, like, talking about being frustrated and all these things. So I think, it's hard, but sometimes you have a responsibility, and you have to say what people don't want to hear sometimes. And that's the hard truth. And in church, if you're just sitting there, you're happy and comfortable, then you have to think about it. But Ken, thanks so much for joining me.
Thank you for having me. It's been fantastic, and it's always a pleasure.
All right. Hey, have a good one. I'm gonna try to get out in the countryside today and enjoy life a little bit.
Take care, Brian.
All right. Take care, Ken. Thank you.
Bye.
Thank you for listening to this episode. We greatly appreciate your support. We would greatly appreciate a positive thumbs up on all of the platforms like iTunes and Spotify, or wherever you're listening. And we just thank you for our Patreon supporters. We greatly appreciate your help in getting this message out. We think there's a lot of important information, and hopefully this helps you. Have a great day, and thank you for listening, and thank you for your support.